Breaking news continuing here on CBS Sports HQ. The NBA was the first domino to fall. The NHL likely will not be the last, with the NHL just announcing that they are pausing the season due to the coronavirus. The NHL holding a conference call with the Board of Governors at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and Commissioner Gary Bettman just issuing this statement. Of note, the final paragraph. We will continue to monitor all appropriate medical advice, and we will encourage our players and other members of the NHL community to take all reasonable precautions, including by self-quarantine where appropriate. Our goal is to resume play as soon as it is appropriate and prudent so that we will be able to complete the season and award the Stanley Cup. Until then, we thank NHL fans for your patience and hope that you stay healthy. For more on this, let's bring in CBS Sports NHL expert Pete Blackburn. He writes for the site as well. Pete, first, let's get your reaction. We talked about this earlier this morning, whether or not the NHL was going to take this path. They indeed have. What's your reaction to it?
Yeah, it's not surprising. I think that their hand was forced. Every other league is doing it, it seems like, and so it would look irresponsible from a public standpoint, and also it would be irresponsible from the league standpoint to force these players to go out and play. And from a public health standpoint, it's just they had to do it, and so it's really not surprising. And honestly, the only thing that's surprising is that it kind of took this long. We had to wait until this afternoon to get official word, but it's not surprising when it came.
Yeah, a number of teams announced that they were going to be playing, and I think San Jose announced that they were going to be playing, not allow large crowds at their games. And so we had been moving towards this in terms of the NHL. But when you look at the situation, Gary Bettman saying they're not canceling the season. They're just suspending operations. They hope to resume, probably, I mean, there's no real timeline. But when you think about that particular timeline, how long can the NHL realistically wait before resuming?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that maybe you have, like a month to play with, because if you're trying to get the playoffs in and get the season finished by the end of July, and the reports were that the NHL inquired about teams' arena availability through the end of July, presumably for the Stanley Cup playoffs. So that gives you, I think, about a month to work with before you would have to come back. And then at that point, if you came back in a month, that would be the end of the regular season. You'd probably have to seed the playoffs based off of point percentage as the standings sit right now. So, I think that they're hoping to come back as soon as possible. That sort of is the language in the release. And I think that's a big reason why they waited as long as they did to actually press pause on the season, is that, they know that this is a not ideal situation based off of the arena availability of arenas and the playoffs. And you also have to consider the fact that you're going to be playing hockey in July and in June throughout the summer months. That could present an ice issue for a lot of these arenas in warm weather cities. So it's definitely not an ideal situation, but the league is leaving open the possibility to return as soon as possible, but also open up that window for an extended absence.
And that is a great point too, Pete, because of the fact that a lot of the venues in the National Hockey League are not just used for hockey. 11 are shared with the NBA, but then they also have concerts. They also have, conferences and stuff that go on at these arenas. So you're really looking at, you could potentially backlog a lot of things if you decide to take more than a month and then decide to resume play when it comes to, completing the season. You're a Boston guy. The Boston Bruins are the #1 team in the National Hockey League. They're suspending play effective immediately. What does this mean for the city of Boston as a Boston fan, that the Bruins may not get to contend for the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, it's a big blow. I mean, the teams in first place have been one of the best teams in the league all year long. Their window is sort of closing. We saw how close they got to the Stanley Cup, to hoisting the Stanley Cup last year, a Game 7 loss. So obviously you want to bounce back and you want to compete as the #1 seed and, possible President's Trophy winners. And you also have to consider the fact that the Red Sox just lost Mookie Betts. The Patriots might lose Tom Brady, and the Bruins are in first place in the NHL, and they might not get to compete for the Stanley Cup. And so it's a tough time, but I'm sure that not a lot of people around the country are going to show too much sympathy for Boston sports fans at this point.
They don't usually, do they, Pete? Anyways.
Right.
Pete Blackburn. Thank you very much, Pete. Pete Blackburn, CBS Sports NHL writer, joining us to talk about the NHL suspension of the regular season. Thanks, Pete.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.